What's up everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to put the A90 Toyota Supra head to head with the new 2023 Nissan Z. If you're new to the channel, I owned an A90 Supra for 2 years, just like the one behind me, and I've owned several 370Zs. I recently had a pre-production press car, new Nissan Z at my house for an entire week. Drove that about 700 miles, really got my bearings with the car, and obviously I have a ton of seat time now in both of the newest cars. So with that said, let's put them head to head. We're gonna go over all these specifications, the exterior styling, the interior, show some clips of some test drives I've done in both of the cars, and then be back here and go over my final thoughts. Underneath the hood of the all-new Nissan Z, you're gonna find a 3-liter twin turbocharged 6-cylinder engine. This V6 pumps out 400 horsepower with 350 pound-feet of torque. It's paired to either a 6-speed manual or the 9-speed automatic transmission, and of course sends all the power to the rear wheels. With a curb weight around 3,500 pounds, you can expect 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds, with 0 to 100 in 10.5 seconds, topping out at 155 miles per hour, and can do the quarter-mile time in 13 seconds at 111 miles per hour. It also runs on roughly a 19-gallon fuel tank, so you're looking at 19 miles per gallon in the city with 28 out on the highway. Underneath the hood, the A90 Toyota Supra utilizes a 3-liter inline 6-cylinder turbocharged engine. It pumps out 382 horsepower with 368 pound-feet of torque. The engine is only paired to the 8-speed automatic transmission and sends all of the power to the rear wheels through a limited slip rear differential. Curb weight is around 3,400 pounds, and you can expect 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds with a top speed at 155 miles per hour. It runs on a 13.7 gallon fuel tank, so you're looking at 22 miles per gallon in the city with 30 out on the highway. And then now moving on to the exterior styling with the all-new Nissan Z. This is a really sharp looking car in person, and it really does come together nicely. We have these retro style LED headlights. You can see them light up. And you can see how it kind of points towards this front with the new Nissan logo. We get a massive square-shaped grille with the silver trim in the upper portion, then all black down below. You get this really cool point, and then the body-colored section right in the center. Has a really retro and modern design, and then I especially love the sharp line in the center of the front that cuts its way into this hood. You can see how it'll split off towards the windshield. Then as you can see on the side profile, we get a lot of smooth body lines. There's one sharp line going from the front fender, cutting through the door right to the door handles. And I really love along the side, you get this silver trim piece cutting its way all the way through. A very neat design. We get black on the B pillar, and then your Z logo right on the side. And then the rear fender arches bulge outwards quite a lot to give it that wider look in back. It has that fastback look in rear, just like the old school Zs. And I think the proportions are absolutely fantastic. Then as we make our way to the rear, you can see how that two-tone gloss black is actually painted onto this full trunk lid, and then we get a lip spoiler mounted on the top of the trunk. I really love the LED taillights you're gonna find. We also get a really sharp body line in the upper portion of the rear bumper that wraps around towards the taillights, then a massive gloss black rear diffuser. When we move over to the Toyota Supra, it has a lot of exaggerated lines to it, very wide fender arches in the front and in the back. The front bumper is more of a cone shape with a small grille in the center and then 2 smaller grills to the side of that making up the front grille. It's a very unique design, but it comes together fantastic. Very long hood, a little bit longer looking than you're going to see on the Z. You do have quite a few fake air vents all around, but it does add to the style. Side profile, you have another fake air vent on the door panel, but it looks really nice. It blends into that rear fender arch very well. Great proportions just like on the Z, however it's a little bit smaller looking in back. And then you get a ducktail spoiler integrated into the trunk, and of course you can also option it with an additional wing. In back you have really nice LED taillights that actually stick up out of the bodywork, so it gives it a really aggressive look in back. And then you have a very rounded rear bumper with a massive diffuser. This Nissan Z gets the two-tone red and black interior. You're going to see the synthetic leather along with the micro suede material. Moving to the door panel now, finish off mostly in black. We get a soft material plastic up top, then the black micro suede all throughout the center with the red leather. Really sporty vibe. You get some of this black material. Pretty nice design leading our way to the headrests that also have a little bit of the red. And you can really get an idea of how this two-tone comes together. We also get a black leather steering wheel with gloss black trim, as well as dark silver accents and your Z logo. You can see a lot of the 370 in this. This certainly is based off of that car. However, we do get a nice update, and it just feels like a more modern version with a sporty look. Looking at the Toyota Supra, it's a little bit more simple. You can pretty much only get a black interior. However, you can get micro suede inserts in the seats if you get the base model or if you get a special edition like the one you specifically see today. But pretty simple on the interior. The screens are not quite as extravagant as the Nissan. However, the graphics are a little bit better. It's a very simple and clean, and it's a more elegant interior. The Z feels like it's a little bit more sporty with all the colors, and it's a little bit more useful with the extra storage versus the Supra. You don't really get too much extra storage in here, and you can tell it's a little bit smaller of an interior. So first and foremost, the visibility and things like that, you have a really good view out of the windshield. I think it's much better than the 370Z was, and about similar to the 350. So nice low hood, so you can easily see what's going on in front of you. Really no issues there. When you look over your left and right shoulders, I like the blind spot that is right here. I think that's a really good touch. But the mirrors all do a really good job. There's no blind spot over the right shoulder, and when you look over there, you have a ton of area that you can see through the glass. Your left shoulder is a little compromised. You kind of have to lean back a little bit to look through that back window, but not too bad for visibility. The 9-speed is pretty good. You know, I wouldn't say it's up there with a ZF 8-speed, but it's pretty responsive, and I like how the lower 5 gears are actually pretty tall to where you can use the power and not just have to shift a million times. That's the one downfall with some high gear transmissions. You just shift all the time. But as you can see, I have so many more revs in 4th gear. You can really wring it out. And being that this has the limited slip diff, you can full throttle around a turn, and it's really good. So, first gear, let's kind of do a little bit of a launch. I mean, it gets up to 80 miles an hour or so without thinking. It's a pretty darn quick car. I don't think you're gonna get in this and think that it's slow. It gets up to speed, and the thing I noticed, it is so linear. It doesn't feel like a turbocharged car. Really, really smooth power delivery. I like that a lot. Handling is pretty good as well. And the Akabono brakes, they come down to a stop super nicely. I really like just how smooth the power delivery is. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed with this car compared to other turbos. It just doesn't feel like a turbo. It doesn't just hit you and then fall off on the top of the RPM. It just pulls and pulls and pulls until you start breaking a few speed limits here and there. Also, the handling kind of surprised me. You know, when I first drove it, I felt like there was a little bit too much body sway. I still feel like there is a little bit, but it must have like a progressive spring rate or something, because once you start getting into the turn, it really stays planted. I still think an upgraded set of coilovers or lowering springs are going to be a huge benefit to this car. It needs some little extra touch to make it a little bit stiffer, but I'm surprised how it does carry its weight nicely in the sweeping turns. I think the really pinpointy turns, it might feel a little heavy, but in these sweepers, the weight balance is pretty good. And then you get up to speed. This is a quick car. It's really, really well balanced. Pretty good view out. You are certainly in a hunkered down car. The windshield is pretty small, but overall front visibility, you can see everything. Looking over your right shoulder, that C-pillar is just a little bulky, but honestly, with your mirrors poked out correctly, it never really bothered me. I think you have good visibility for what it is. You can always see around as things roll around, because there's not too much interior storage, but in automatic, getting up to speed, I mean, so effortless, such a smooth power delivery. I really like that a lot. And then the suspension. So we have active suspension, active steering, and then of course that active exhaust. In normal mode, everything is really soft. The steering is pretty light, It's a nice GT car. This is a great highway cruiser, but then manual mode and in sport mode, the steering now tightens up, the suspension gets harsher, transmission shifts harder, and then the throttle response is much sharper as well. Really impressive car. The fact that you do get the active settings and everything, it makes the car kind of above its class. Well, it certainly gets up to high speeds without even thinking. It is very smooth, and one thing that I'm certainly noticing between this and the Z is just how smooth the power is. The 2020 Supra just isn't quite as smooth because of the smaller turbo. Man, it is such a nice car, and when we get into some sharp turns now, you can tell how hunkered down and tight the Supra is. Probably is one of the best performance cars for the money. I mean, going 65 around some sweeping turns. It is really, really tight and light on its toes. And the ZF automatic transmission, it is really snappy. Gosh, I love how precise this car is. It is a really, really like top-notch sports car, and I think one of the biggest things with the Supra, it exceeded all expectations. Nobody really expected it to be what it was, and it really is a solid, solid performance car. I honestly don't think there's much of a power difference. Fourth gear. It doesn't, maybe pulls a little bit harder. It's not crazy much faster. I don't think you're gonna drive the two back to back and think either is slow. When I tested the Z, I did 0 to 60 in 4 seconds flat using launch control. This car, it's like 3.8, 3.9. You're not really gonna notice that. The gear ratios as well, I think the Z seems to have a little bit taller gears to where you don't need to shift so quickly. This one, you do kind of stay in the higher RPM, like 5,000 to almost 7,000, so you are maybe shifting a little bit more. The biggest difference though is the transmission. The ZF 8-speed, as far as torque converter automatics go, this is the best torque converter automatic. It is absolutely lightning quick and as precise as you could ever want it. When you're driving in the Z, there's a delay. It's about a 200 RPM delay. Not the biggest difference, but it's very noticeable. So the precision you get with the ZF is awesome. As soon as I do it, shifted. Like instantaneous, that is what you want in a sports car. I'm buying the manual regardless, so I don't really care. But if you are comparing automatic to automatic, this is by far a better transmission for the precision. It is certainly better. So this definitely is a little bit more performance oriented and just a little bit more precise, and it has a little bit more of that refinement. So with all that out of the way now, my final ending thoughts with the Nissan Z versus the Toyota Supra. Honestly, I do like them both. They're both really fun. They have a ton to offer. I was able to do 0 to 60 in 4 seconds flat on the Z, which is only slightly slower, maybe less than a quarter of a second slower than this. They're really, in the real world, not much different in acceleration. Especially if you have the same tires on them, you're not gonna notice crazy differences. The biggest difference, of course, is the transmission. The ZF is just absolutely amazing. For a torque converter, it is just so snappy. I think the Z could be a little bit quicker. On top of that, the active dampers, being that you have the sport mode and normal mode in the Supra, that really makes the handling very, very on point. However, when you look at the pricing, like I mentioned in other videos, the Z is cheaper. If you spec both cars out as high as they go with performance and technology features, there's a $6,000 price difference. Now, that means we're not talking about the carbon fiber edition Supra, which is about 65 grand with the driver's assistance package. And that means we're not speccing the painted roof or illuminated dorsals on the Z, which gets it up to closer to 53. So for a $6,000 price difference, I think that does justify the little bit less performance in the Z. On top of that, it does have more interior space, more storage solutions, and of course, being a little bit cheaper, it's easier to get into that price point. Not to say Z owners can't afford a Supra. Honestly, pretty much anybody who can afford either car can afford either car. So the price isn't really a big deal. However, money's money, and 6 grand is still a big difference. So with that said, I think the buyers of each car are gonna be slightly different. I think if you really want the best of the best out of the gate, you don't really care about the extra 6 grand, get a 3.0 premium with driver's assistance package. You're gonna get it all. You get all the performance, all the technology. It's just a rock solid, fantastic car. However, if you're more into the mods and you can justify not spending quite that much, maybe save 6 grand to then put into the Z in mods, get the Z Performance, you know? With that car with 6 grand in mods to then make it the same price as one of these, then all of a sudden you're gonna have a faster car, and it is gonna be one heck of a fun car in the turns because it has so much money into it. Still then at the same price as this car. Now, if performance is all you care about and you could literally care less about the technology, I think the base Supra 3.0 is a better option than the Performance Z. With that car, you get all the performance, nothing missing. You just don't get the navigation hard drive in there, the upgraded audio, heads-up display, heated seats, a few more things like that, radar cruise control. So if those mean nothing to you, honestly, spend the extra grand or two and just get a base Supra because the performance is totally there right out of the gate. The Z is basically a budget version of the Supra. It's a little bit cheaper price point, not quite as refined, not quite on the same level with all the performance. But since it is a significant price difference when you spec them out the same, I think that makes sense for what you're getting. But at the end of the day, it really is the budget version of the Supra. The Supra is just top-notch, top tier for what it is in this price range. And the Z kind of takes that step back, a little bit cheaper price point, all the same options, just a little bit toned down in performance. And it's, again, it's only a little bit, it's not crazy big difference. It's definitely a fun car, very fast. And I think the modification potential is gonna be just the same with both of the cars. As far as the base models of each car, the $40,000 Z, that seems like a really good entry point. It's cheaper than the 4-cylinder Supra, which is a great price point. However, you are missing the nice interior with the leather, the navigation. You don't get the big brakes, no limited slip, smaller wheels. So I feel like you're missing a lot. I really think they should have added the limited slip. But if you just want a nice sporty car with plenty of power, for 40 grand, that's a heck of a car. But the 4-cylinder Supra, you do get a much nicer interior with more technology than the base Z, but you're paying more for it, and at the end of the day with performance, you are getting less. So those two might be a completely different demographic than the upper tier cars. And then I think the Nismo Z is going to be that Z that really has just all the performance and is gonna outshine one of these for sure, just because it's gonna be very raw. I'm betting on that and I'm hoping it is. If the Nismo never comes out, a base model manual Supra 3.0 would be a car that I would definitely end up picking up. So with all of that said, comparing the two cars, honestly, in today's day and age when every car is getting boring, automakers are making boring EV cars, it's awesome that there are two very, very cool JDM sports cars that people can buy. Great price points, great options. They look fantastic. They're super fun to drive. You honestly can't go wrong with either car. With that said, I think that's about it. I've talked about these two cars quite a lot in the last month or so with all the videos on the two. Now we just sit back and wait for Nissan to have these at the dealership. So anyways, comment below, what do you guys think of the two cars? How do they really stack up for those of you who have actually driven both of the cars? If you haven't driven them, you obviously don't quite know exactly what you're talking about, but they both really do have a lot to offer. They're both fun. I really can't go wrong with either one. They're gonna give you a smile. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for plenty more content. I'll see you guys in the next video.